Part 6. Distance between two worlds. The next morning felt colder than usual. Not because of the weather, the storm had already passed, but because something invisible had changed. Morning Light Cafe opened as always. The bell chimed, coffee brewed, regular customers filled their seats. Conversations flowed, laughter echoed softly. Everything looked the same. Emma did her job perfectly. She smiled, took orders, remembered names. But inside, she felt unsettled. Her eyes kept drifting toward the door, waiting, even though she told herself she wasn't. Ethan didn't come that morning, or the next, or the day after. Emma told herself it made sense. Someone like him had responsibilities, a life far bigger than their small town. Still, every time the bell rang, her heart reacted before logic could stop it. And every time, disappointment followed quietly. Mr. Walter noticed first. "You look like someone expecting a letter that hasn't arrived," he said gently while stirring his coffee. Emma forced a smile. "Just tired." He nodded, pretending to believe her. Small towns understood silence better than questions. Meanwhile, hundreds of miles away, Ethan Carter stepped back into his New York office. The moment he entered, the world snapped back into motion. Assistants rushed toward him. Screens displayed urgent updates. Phones rang endlessly. "Welcome back, sir," Laura said, relief clear in her voice. "We postponed as much as we could." He nodded automatically. Meetings began immediately. Investors demanded explanations. Board members discussed expansion strategies. Media interviews waited downstairs. Ethan answered questions flawlessly. His voice was confident, his posture controlled, his decisions precise. To everyone else, nothing had changed. But inside, he felt disconnected, like watching his own life from outside. During a meeting, someone joked about a billion-dollar contract. The room laughed. Ethan didn't. Instead, his mind drifted to a small cafe filled with warm light and a girl who served coffee with genuine kindness. He realized something unsettling. He missed simplicity more than success. Late that evening, Laura entered his office carefully. "You've been quiet today," she said. "Busy," he replied automatically. She crossed her arms. "I've worked with you 6 years. That's not your busy face." He sighed, leaning back in his chair. "Have you ever met someone," he asked slowly, "who makes everything else feel less important?" Laura smiled knowingly. "That sounds suspiciously like a personal problem." He didn't deny it. "She doesn't belong in this world," he said quietly. Laura tilted her head. "Or maybe you don't belong in this one as much as you think." Her words stayed with him long after she left. Back in Maple Harbor, Emma tried to focus on saving the cafe. She organized live music nights, redesigned the menu board, created social media pages to attract visitors. Customers appreciated her effort, but worry remained. Bills continued piling up. One evening, Ben sat with her after closing. "You've done more than anyone could," he said gently. "But even effort has limits." Emma stared at the empty tables. "I don't want to give up." "I know," Ben said softly. She hesitated before asking, "If it closes, what will you do?" He shrugged sadly. "Start over somewhere else." Emma nodded, though the idea hurt. Starting over again felt exhausting. That night, Emma walked home alone beneath clear stars. Her thoughts returned to Ethan despite her attempts to avoid them. She replayed conversations, laughter, the storm night. She wondered if she had imagined the connection. Maybe for him, it had been just a break from reality, a temporary escape. People like him didn't stay in small towns forever. She told herself she understood. Yet understanding didn't stop missing him. Days later, a television in the cafe displayed financial news while customers ate breakfast. Emma barely paid attention until a familiar face appeared on the screen. Tech billionaire Ethan Carter announces major expansion plans following strategic meetings in New York. Her hands froze. There he was, perfect suit, confident smile, surrounded by cameras. He looked completely different from the man who carried coffee trays and laughed at spilled foam. Customers murmured in admiration. Emma quickly turned away, pretending to clean a table. Her chest tightened. That world looked impossibly far from hers. She whispered quietly to herself. Of course he went back. And suddenly she felt foolish for believing anything could be different. That same evening, Ethan sat alone in his penthouse overlooking Central Park. City lights stretched endlessly below him. Everything he once worked for surrounded him. Yet the apartment felt emptier than ever. He picked up his phone, opened Emma's contact, saved simply as Emma Cafe. His thumb hovered over the call button. He hesitated. What would he say? I miss you? I don't feel like myself here anymore. The words felt too vulnerable. He set the phone down again. For a man who negotiated billion-dollar deals without fear, making one honest phone call felt terrifying. 2 weeks passed. Snow melted slowly in Vermont. And then the news Emma feared arrived. Ben called her into the office. He didn't need to speak immediately. His expression said everything. We couldn't secure funding, he said quietly. We close at the end of the week. The words landed heavily. Emma nodded slowly, trying to remain composed. I understand. But her voice trembled slightly. After Ben left, she stood alone in the empty cafe. Sunlight filtered through the windows, illuminating dust floating in the air. She touched the counter gently, memories flooding back. Laughter, conversations, small moments that built her sense of belonging. She had fought as hard as she could. And still, it wasn't enough. Tears finally slipped down her cheeks. Not loud sobbing, just quiet grief. Another place she loved slipping away. That night, Emma sat at home, staring at her phone. She opened Ethan's contact, closed it again. What would she even say? The cafe is closing. It sounded like a goodbye. She wasn't ready to speak. So she put the phone aside, and neither of them called. Miles apart, both believing the other had chosen a different life. In New York, Ethan stood before a massive window during another sleepless night. Something felt wrong. Deeply wrong, though he couldn't explain why. He had regained control of his company, but lost something far more important. He didn't yet know that at that exact moment, the cafe that changed his life was preparing to disappear. And when he finally learned the truth, everything would change. Part 7. The choice that changed everything. New York never slowed down. Morning traffic roared beneath Ethan Carter's office windows as another demanding day began. Assistants moved quickly through hallways, phones rang endlessly, and screens flashed market updates from around the world. Everything functioned perfectly, except him. Ethan sat at the head of a conference table while executives discussed projections worth billions of dollars. Charts appeared, strategies were debated, decisions were expected. He heard the words, but they felt distant. Projected growth of 18%, one executive said. Expansion timeline approved. Media response extremely positive. Ethan nodded automatically. Inside, however, his thoughts drifted somewhere else entirely. A small cafe filled with warm light, laughter, and a girl who had looked at him without seeing a billionaire. He hadn't spoken to Emma in weeks. At first, he told himself she needed space. Then work consumed him again. Now silence felt permanent. And he hated himself for allowing it. The meeting ended. Executives left satisfied. Laura remained behind. You're somewhere else again, she said gently. Ethan exhaled slowly. Maybe. She hesitated before placing a tablet in front of him. I wasn't sure if I should show you this, she said. But I think you want to know. On the screen was a local Vermont news article. Beloved Morning Light Cafe to close after financial struggles. Ethan froze. The words blurred for a moment as his mind struggled to process them. What? He whispered. He read quickly. Rising costs. Lack of investment. Final week of operation. Closing date. 3 days from now. His chest tightened painfully. How long has this been known? He asked. A few days, Laura said carefully. I only saw it this morning. Ethan stood, so suddenly his chair rolled backward. I should have known, he murmured. He remembered Emma's worried expression, overheard conversations, her determination to save the cafe. And he had left, gone back to meetings while the place that mattered most to her disappeared. Regret hit harder than any business failure. I need my plane ready, he said. Laura blinked. You have investor meetings this afternoon. Cancel them. The board. Cancel everything. His voice carried a firmness she hadn't heard before. Not cold authority, but emotional certainty. Laura slowly nodded. Yes, sir. Ethan grabbed his coat. For once, he didn't hesitate. The flight to Vermont felt longer than any journey he had taken. Ethan stared out the window as clouds passed beneath the plane. He replayed every moment with Emma. Her laughter, the storm night, the way she believed small things mattered. He realized something undeniable. He wasn't going back to fix a business problem. He was going back because losing her felt unbearable. And for the first time in his life, money, reputation, and success ranked second to a single person. The meeting ended. Executives left satisfied. Laura remained behind. "You're somewhere else again," she said gently. Ethan exhaled slowly. "Maybe." She hesitated before placing a tablet in front of him. "I wasn't sure if I should show you this," she said. "But I think you want to know." On the screen was a local Vermont news article. Beloved Morning Light Cafe to close after financial struggles. Ethan froze. The words blurred for a moment as his mind struggled to process them. "What?" he whispered. He read quickly. "Rising costs. Lack of investment. Final week of operation. Closing date. 3 days from now." His chest tightened painfully. "How long has this been known?" he asked. "A few days," Laura said carefully. "I only saw it this morning." Ethan stood, so suddenly his chair rolled backward. "I should have known," he murmured. He remembered Emma's worried expression, overheard conversations, her determination to save the cafe. And he had left, gone back to meetings while the place that mattered most to her disappeared. Regret hit harder than any business failure. "I need my plane ready," he said. Laura blinked. "You have investor meetings this afternoon. Cancel them." "The board." "Cancel everything." His voice carried a firmness she hadn't heard before. Not cold authority, but emotional certainty. Laura slowly nodded. "Yes, sir." Ethan grabbed his coat. For once, he didn't hesitate. The flight to Vermont felt longer than any journey he had taken. Ethan stared out the window as clouds passed beneath the plane. He replayed every moment with Emma. Her laughter, the storm night, the way she believed small things mattered. He realized something undeniable. He wasn't going back to fix a business problem. He was going back because losing her felt unbearable. And for the first time in his life, money, reputation, and success ranked second to a single person. Maple Harbor looked quieter when he arrived. Snow had mostly melted, leaving wet streets reflecting gray skies. Ethan drove straight to the cafe. His heart pounded harder with every turn. When Morning Light Cafe came into view, a sign hung in the window. "Final week. Thank you for everything." Lights glowed softly inside. People filled tables, talking quietly, almost nostalgically. Ethan parked quickly and stepped out. For a moment, he simply stood there, afraid he was too late. Then he pushed the door open. The bell chimed. Emma looked up from behind the counter. Time seemed to stop. Surprise crossed her face first, then disbelief. "Ethan." He walked toward her slowly, unsure where to begin. "I just found out," he said. "Why didn't you tell me?" Emma swallowed. "I didn't think it was your problem. It is if it matters to you." Her expression softened, but remained guarded. "You have a whole company to run," she said quietly. "This is just a small cafe." He shook his head. "It's not just a cafe." Customers nearby sensed the emotional tension and respectfully looked away. Ethan lowered his voice. "This place changed me," he said. "You changed me." Emma's eyes shimmered slightly, but she held her composure. "You went back to your life," she said. "I figured that was the end of our story." He stepped closer. "I went back because I was scared." "Of what?" "Of wanting something I couldn't control." Silence wrapped around them. Emma's defenses began cracking, but uncertainty remained. "You can't save everything," she said gently. "I know," he replied, "but I can try when something matters." She shook her head slightly. "You don't understand. Even if someone invested now, it's too late. Paperwork, debts, it's complicated." Ethan smiled faintly. "Complicated is my specialty." She almost laughed despite herself, then grew serious again. "I don't want you fixing this because you feel guilty." "I'm not," he said firmly. "I'm here because I care about you." The honesty in his voice made her breath catch. That evening, after customers left, Emma locked the door. They stood alone inside the cafe once more, just like during the storm. Only now the atmosphere felt fragile. This place gave me purpose, she admitted quietly. When I lost my parents, I didn't know where I belonged. Here, I felt needed. Ethan listened carefully. I don't want to lose another home, she whispered. He stepped closer, careful not to overwhelm her. You won't, he said. She searched his face. You sound very sure. I am. He hesitated, then added softly. But not because of money. Emma frowned slightly. Then why? Because I'm choosing to stay this time. The words hung between them. Her heart pounded. You mean here? He nodded. I realized something in New York. Success means nothing if I build it alone. Emotion filled her eyes. That's a big decision. So are the important things. They stood inches apart now, neither moving away, neither pretending anymore. Emma whispered, almost afraid of the answer. And what if I'm not part of your world? Ethan smiled gently. Then maybe I need a different world. Tears finally slipped down her cheeks. Not from sadness, from relief, from hope she had tried to deny. She laughed softly through tears. You really don't make small choices, do you? No, he admitted, especially when it comes to you. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Emma stepped forward and hugged him, not politely, not cautiously, fully. Ethan wrapped his arms around her, feeling something settle inside him. Certainty. The kind he had searched for his entire life. Outside, evening lights turned on across Maple Harbor. Inside the cafe, the story that almost ended began changing direction. Because sometimes the most important decision isn't building an empire, it's choosing where and with whom you truly belong. Part 8. When help feels like control. Morning Light Cafe opened the next day with a strange mixture of hope and uncertainty. Emma arrived early, unlocking the door while the sky was still pale gray. The familiar routine usually calmed her, turning on lights, preparing coffee beans, arranging chairs. But today her thoughts refused to settle. Ethan had returned, and he had said he was staying. Part of her felt warm every time she remembered the way he looked at her last night. Honest, vulnerable, certain. Another part felt uneasy, because Ethan Carter didn't do small things. And small things were exactly what this cafe was built on. The bell chimed behind her. She turned, already knowing who it was. You're early, she said. Ethan smiled slightly. I didn't sleep much. Me neither. For a moment, they simply stood there, sharing a quiet understanding. Then Emma handed him an apron. He raised an eyebrow. You said you were staying, she said. That means you work. He laughed softly and tied it around his waist. Yes, boss. The normalcy of the moment made Emma relax. Maybe things could stay simple after all. The morning rush began quickly. Ethan helped again, taking orders, cleaning tables, learning customers' names. He still made mistakes, but people found his effort charming. Mr. Walter leaned toward Emma conspiratorially. He's improving, the old man whispered. Emma smiled. Don't tell him that. He'll get confident. But she couldn't deny how natural Ethan seemed here now. Less guarded, more present. And watching him laugh with customers warmed her heart in ways she tried not to analyze too deeply. Around noon, 3 unfamiliar people entered the cafe wearing business attire. They didn't order. Instead, they examined the space carefully, walls, seating, kitchen area. Emma frowned slightly. Can I help you? She asked. One of them smiled professionally. We're here to conduct a preliminary assessment. Emma blinked. Assessment? Yes, the woman replied. Mr. Carter requested an evaluation for renovation and expansion possibilities. Emma slowly turned toward Ethan. He froze mid-step. The realization hit her immediately. You called them. He approached carefully. I wanted to see what options existed. Her stomach tightened. What kind of options? The woman answered before he could. With investment, this location could be transformed into a modern cafe brand. Expanded seating, upgraded equipment, possibly multiple locations. Emma's expression changed completely. The warmth vanished from her eyes. A brand, she repeated quietly. Ethan sensed the shift instantly. Emma, wait. But she stepped back. You're turning it into a business project. No, he said quickly. I'm trying to save it. This place doesn't need saving like that. The consultants exchanged awkward glances and stepped outside, sensing tension. Silence filled the cafe. Emma crossed her arms, hurt clear in her voice. You didn't even ask me. I wanted to surprise you, Ethan said. Well, you did. Her words carried sharper edges than before. This cafe isn't supposed to become some corporate chain. It wouldn't lose its soul, he insisted. That's exactly what happens when money takes over. Customers nearby grew quiet, pretending not to listen. Ethan lowered his voice. I thought this would solve the problem. Emma shook her head slowly. You don't understand why this place matters. Then help me understand, he pleaded. She gestured around the cafe. This place works because it's small, because people feel a home here, because it's not optimized or scaled or redesigned by consultants. He hesitated. But without investment, it closes. Yes, she said softly. And maybe that hurts, but at least it stays honest. Her words struck him deeply. He realized too late that he had approached the problem the only way he knew, by fixing it efficiently, not emotionally. Emma walked behind the counter, needing distance. I appreciate that you want to help, she said quietly. But I don't want you changing everything just because you can. Ethan ran a hand through his hair, frustrated with himself. I wasn't trying to control anything. But you did, she replied. The truth hung painfully between them. He had acted without asking. Something he never noticed in business. But here, with her, it mattered. A lot. The rest of the day passed awkwardly. They worked together, but conversation stayed minimal. Every glance carried unspoken tension. By closing time, Emma felt emotionally exhausted. She wiped the counter slowly while Ethan stood near the door. I messed up, he said finally. She didn't deny it. You're used to solving problems with power, she said gently. But not everything needs to be bigger to survive. He nodded slowly. I see that now. She sighed. I'm not angry that you want to help. I'm scared that helping means losing what makes this place special. Ethan stepped closer, but kept respectful distance. What if we find a way that protects it, he asked. She looked uncertain. I don't know if that exists. Then we'll figure it out together. The word together softened something inside her. But doubt remained. Trust, once shaken, needed time. That night, Emma walked home alone again. Snow melted into quiet puddles along the street. Her heart felt heavy. She cared about Ethan, more than she wanted to admit. But loving someone powerful meant risking being overshadowed. She feared becoming part of his world instead of him becoming part of hers. Across town, Ethan sat in his hotel room, staring at paperwork from the consultants. For the first time, numbers felt useless. He replayed Emma's words again and again. This place works because it's small. He realized something important. He hadn't truly listened. He had tried to save the cafe the way a billionaire would, not the way Emma needed. And if he wanted to stay in her life, he would have to learn a completely different kind of success. Outside, Maple Harbor grew quiet under the night sky. Two people who cared deeply about each other lay awake separately, both wondering the same thing. Could love exist between two worlds built so differently? Neither knew yet that the answer would come soon, through a challenge neither of them expected. Part 9. The Past Returns. The morning after their argument arrived quietly, but the tension between Emma and Ethan remained. Morning Light Cafe opened as usual, yet something subtle had changed. Their conversations were polite instead of natural. Smiles appeared, but ended too quickly. Emma focused intensely on work, avoiding moments when silence might force them to talk about what happened. Ethan noticed, and it bothered him more than he expected. He had faced hostile investors and aggressive competitors without discomfort. But Emma's emotional distance unsettled him deeply. Because this time, the mistake had been personal. The bell above the cafe door chimed late that morning. Emma looked up automatically and froze. A tall man stepped inside, brushing snow from his jacket. He looked around with familiarity before his eyes landed on her. His face lit up instantly. Emma. Her breath caught. Daniel. He smiled widely and walked toward the counter. It's really you, he said. I wasn't sure you were still working here. Ethan, wiping a nearby table, glanced over. Something about the man's confidence immediately drew his attention. Emma stepped out from behind the counter, surprised but smiling cautiously. What are you doing here? She asked. I moved back, Daniel said. New job at the architecture firm downtown. He looked around the cafe, fondly. Feels exactly the same. Emma laughed softly. Some things don't change. Ethan felt an unfamiliar tightness in his chest. He didn't know why yet. Daniel ordered coffee, but stayed at the counter talking with Emma. Their conversation flowed easily, shared memories, inside jokes, references Ethan didn't understand. Emma looked relaxed in a way he hadn't seen since before their argument. And suddenly Ethan realized something uncomfortable. This man knew parts of her life he didn't. Ben leaned toward Ethan quietly. "That's Daniel," he whispered. "They dated years ago, before everything happened with her parents." Ethan's hand paused mid-motion. "Oh," he said calmly. But inside, something shifted sharply. Jealousy, a feeling completely unfamiliar to him. Daniel laughed at something Emma said. "You always wanted to leave this town," he teased. "I'm surprised you stayed." Emma shrugged lightly. "Life changed." "Well," Daniel said warmly, "maybe now's a good time to start fresh again." The words lingered. Ethan tried to ignore how much they bothered him. He reminded himself he had no claim over Emma. Still, watching someone else make her laugh felt unexpectedly painful. Later, Emma approached Ethan while refilling supplies. "You're quiet today?" she said gently. "Just working," he replied. She studied him carefully. "You okay?" He hesitated. "Who is he to you now?" Emma understood immediately. Her expression softened. "He's part of my past," she said honestly. "We dated when we were younger." Ethan nodded slowly. "And now?" "Now he's just someone I used to know." The answer should have reassured him. But doubt lingered, not because of Daniel, but because Ethan suddenly realized how fragile his place in Emma's life still was. That afternoon, Daniel returned again. And the next day, too. Each visit felt increasingly natural, like he was reintegrating into Emma's world. Ethan told himself he was being irrational. Yet every shared laugh felt like a reminder that Emma belonged here long before Ethan arrived, and might belong here long after he left. Meanwhile, Ben gathered Emma and Ethan after closing. "I got a call today," he said carefully. "A local community grant might be available." Emma's eyes lit up. "Really? It's small," Ben continued. "But if we prove strong community support, we might delay closing." Hope flickered again. "What do we need?" Emma asked. "A big turnout this weekend," Ben said. "An event that shows this place matters." Emma immediately began thinking aloud. Live music, local artists, maybe a charity night. Daniel, who had stayed late helping clean, stepped forward. "I could help design flyers," he offered. "Marketing layouts are part of my job." Emma smiled gratefully. "That would be amazing." Ethan watched silently. He wanted to help too, but suddenly felt unsure where he fit. Later that night, Ethan and Emma walked outside together. Cold air surrounded them. "You seem distant," she said softly. He exhaled slowly. "I'm trying to understand where I belong here." She frowned. "What do you mean?" "You have history here. People who know you. A life that existed before me." Emma stopped walking. "And that scares you?" He hesitated. "Yes." The honesty surprised even him. She stepped closer. "Ethan, my past doesn't compete with you. But I don't want to be temporary," he admitted quietly. Her expression softened deeply. "You're not." But uncertainty still lingered between them. Not because of lack of feeling, but because neither fully understood how their worlds could merge. The weekend event arrived quickly. The cafe filled more than it had in months. Music played. Laughter echoed. People shared memories about what the cafe meant to them. Emma moved through the crowd, glowing with happiness. Ethan watched her from across the room, realizing something important. He didn't just want her to choose him. He wanted to deserve being chosen. Daniel approached Emma during a quiet moment. "You look happy," he said. "I am," she replied. He hesitated before speaking again. When I came back, I wondered if we might try again." Emma's smile faded slightly. "Daniel, I'm serious," he said gently. "We were good together." Ethan unknowingly overheard from nearby. His chest tightened. Emma shook her head softly. "You were important to me," she said. "But my life moved forward." Daniel followed her gaze toward Ethan. Understanding crossed his face. "Oh," he said quietly. Later, outside under string lights, Ethan approached Emma. "You didn't have to reject him because of me," he said. She looked confused. I didn't reject him because of you. Then why? Emma stepped closer. Because my feelings changed. She met his eyes directly. And you're the reason they changed. The words hit him harder than any confession he'd imagined. But instead of relief, fear surfaced. What if I can't give you the life you deserve here? He asked. She smiled gently. I don't need a perfect life. I just need honesty. He reached for her hand instinctively. She let him. For a moment, everything felt clear again. Yet neither realized that the real test of their relationship was still coming. One that would force both of them to decide how much they were truly willing to sacrifice. Part 10. The Price of Good Intentions. The cafe had never felt so alive. Music floated through Morning Light Cafe as locals gathered for the community event. String lights glowed along the walls. Laughter filled every corner. And for the first time in weeks, hope replaced fear. Emma moved between tables with bright energy, thanking guests, refilling drinks, and greeting people who came specifically to support the cafe. This might actually work, Ben whispered to her, amazed by the turnout. Emma smiled, breathless but happy. For the first time since hearing about the closure, she allowed herself to believe the cafe could survive. Across the room, Ethan watched quietly. Seeing Emma happy mattered more to him than the success of any company he had ever built. But anxiety lingered beneath his calm expression, because earlier that morning, he had received news that complicated everything. Before the event began, Ethan had stepped outside to answer a phone call from Laura. Her voice sounded unusually serious. The Community Grant Committee reviewed the cafe application, she said. There's a problem. Ethan's stomach tightened. What kind of problem? They're concerned about financial stability. Without a guaranteed investor or long-term backing, they may reject it. Ethan looked through the cafe window at Emma laughing with customers. How long until they decide? Tomorrow morning. Tomorrow. Too soon. If the grant fails, Laura continued, the cafe closes immediately. Ethan ended the call slowly. His mind began calculating solutions automatically. For him, the answer seemed obvious. He could secure the cafe instantly. One investment, one signature, problem solved. But Emma's words echoed in his head. I don't want you changing everything just because you can. He hesitated. For once, logic and emotion pulled in opposite directions. Inside, the event grew louder. Daniel helped set up a small stage while local musicians played acoustic songs. People applauded warmly. Emma caught Ethan watching her and walked over. You okay? She asked. He forced a smile. Just thinking. That's dangerous, she teased softly. He laughed, but worry remained. What happens if the grant doesn't work? He asked carefully. Emma's smile faded slightly. Then we close, she said honestly, and we accept it. You sound calm about that. I'm not calm, she admitted. But sometimes you have to let things in naturally. The answer unsettled him. Let it end? He couldn't accept that. Not when he had the power to prevent it. The event ended late that night. Customers left hopeful, promising support. Emma locked the door and leaned against it, exhausted but glowing. That went better than I ever imagined, she said. Ethan nodded. It did. She looked at him carefully. You still seem worried. He hesitated, then made a decision. Emma, if the grant doesn't come through, I want to help financially. Her expression immediately tightened. We talked about this. I know, he said quickly. But listen, not expansion, not chains. Just enough to keep things running. She shook her head gently. That's still you saving it. And what's wrong with that? Her voice softened, but remained firm. Because then it survives because of you, not because the community chose it. Ethan struggled to understand. Does the reason matter if it stays open? Yes, she said quietly. It matters to me. Silence fell between them again. That night, unable to sleep, Ethan walked through empty streets. He replayed the conversation repeatedly. Every instinct told him to act. He couldn't watch something Emma loved disappear when he had the ability to stop it. By morning, he convinced himself he had found the perfect solution. Help quietly, without telling her. Protect the cafe without changing it. In his mind, it felt harmless, kind, necessary. The next afternoon, Emma received a call from the grant committee. She stood behind the counter, heart racing. Yes, she said nervously. She listened. Her expression shifted from hope to confusion. Approved? She repeated. Ben looked up instantly. Emma covered the phone, whispering excitedly, "We got it." After hanging up, she laughed in disbelief. They approved the grant. The cafe erupted in celebration. Hugs, cheers, relief. Emma felt tears of happiness rise. They had done it. The community had saved Morning Light. Or so she believed. An hour later, Daniel approached her quietly. "I overheard something strange," he said carefully. Emma frowned. "What?" One of the committee members mentioned a private guarantor backing the cafe financially. Her smile faded. "What guarantor?" Daniel hesitated. "They said Ethan Carter personally guaranteed the financial risk." The words hit her like cold water. Emma turned slowly toward Ethan, who stood across the room, talking with Ben. Understanding flooded her mind. The approval hadn't happened naturally. He had intervened. Again, she walked toward him, emotions rising quickly. "You guaranteed the grant?" she asked. Ethan turned, surprised. Yes, but only as backup. It doesn't change anything." Her voice trembled. "You promised you wouldn't do this." "I didn't change the cafe," he insisted. "I just made sure it survived. You made the decision for me. I was protecting something you love." "I didn't ask you to protect it," she said, louder than intended. The room fell silent. Hurt filled her eyes. "I needed to know it mattered on its own," she whispered. "Not because a billionaire saved it." Ethan felt frustration rising. It was going to close. "Then maybe that was part of life," she replied. Her words shocked him. He had spent his entire life preventing loss. She was willing to accept it. They stood facing each other, two people who cared deeply, yet understood the world completely differently. Emma stepped back, shaking her head. "You still don't get it." "Then explain it to me," he said, desperate. "I needed you to trust that some things are bigger than control," she said softly. "But you couldn't let go." Pain filled his expression. "I couldn't lose you." Her breath caught. "That wasn't your decision to make." The words lingered heavily. For the first time, Ethan realized his help might have crossed a boundary he didn't see. Emma wiped a tear quickly. "I need time," she said again, but this time it sounded more serious. She grabbed her coat and walked out. The cafe remained silent behind her. Ethan stood frozen, realizing that despite his best intentions, he might have pushed her away. Outside, Emma walked quickly through cold air, trying to calm her racing thoughts. She wasn't angry because he helped. She was hurt because he hadn't trusted her strength. Meanwhile, inside the cafe, Ethan felt something unfamiliar and terrifying. Not business failure, not public criticism, but the possibility that love alone might not be enough if he didn't learn to change. Neither of them knew yet that the next few days would force a choice neither could avoid: to hold on to pride or to truly understand each other. Part 11. When silence hurts more than words. The cafe stayed open. Customers returned daily, celebrating what they believed was a miracle, a small business saved by community support and determination. Laughter filled the space again. Music played softly in the evenings. To everyone else, Morning Light Cafe had survived. But for Emma, something fragile had broken. And for Ethan, success had never felt so empty. Emma arrived early each morning as usual, but now she avoided lingering conversations. She focused strictly on work, preparing coffee, organizing supplies, helping customers, anything that prevented her from thinking too much, especially about him. Ethan still came to the cafe, but things were different. They spoke politely, carefully, like strangers try not to reopen an old wound. He ordered coffee instead of making it himself. She served him with a professional smile instead of warmth. The distance between them felt heavier than any argument. One morning, Mr. Walter sat beside Ethan. "You look like a man who fixed something but still lost," the old man said quietly. Ethan gave a faint smile. "That obvious?" Mr. Walter nodded. "Sometimes helping isn't the same as listening." Ethan stared into his coffee. "I thought I was protecting her." "And maybe you were," the old man said gently. "But people don't always want protection. Sometimes they want faith." The word stayed with him long after the conversation ended. Emma, meanwhile, struggled privately. She knew Ethan meant well. She knew he cared. That was the problem. If he had acted selfishly, anger would have been easy. But he acted out of love and still hurt her. She feared something deeper than the cafe issue. She feared always feeling small beside someone powerful. Feared losing her independence without realizing it. One evening, her grandmother noticed her quiet mood. "You're carrying something heavy," June said softly. Emma sighed. "He keeps trying to save things," she admitted. "And I don't know how to stand beside someone like that without disappearing." June smiled gently. "Love isn't about standing behind someone's strength," she said. "It's about standing beside their growth." Emma looked up. "But what if he never changes?" June squeezed her hand. "Then you must decide whether he's willing to learn." Across town, Ethan packed a suitcase. His return flight to New York was scheduled for the next morning. He told himself it was the logical decision. Emma needed space. His company needed leadership. And maybe their worlds truly didn't fit together. He paused, holding the small apron Emma had once handed him jokingly. He hadn't meant to keep it, yet he couldn't throw it away. For the first time in years, leaving somewhere felt like failure. Not professional failure. Personal. That evening, a sudden storm rolled into Maple Harbor again. Not snow this time, but heavy rain and strong winds. Power flickered across town. Inside the cafe, Emma prepared to close early when the lights suddenly went out. Darkness filled the room. A few customers gasped softly. "It's okay," Emma said calmly. "We have candles." She moved carefully, lighting small flames around the cafe, turning darkness into warm golden shadows. The atmosphere reminded her painfully of the night she and Ethan had been snowed in together. Memories she tried not to revisit. After customers left, Emma prepared to lock up when the door suddenly opened. Rain rushed inside with the wind. Ethan stood there, slightly soaked. They both froze. Neither had expected to see the other alone like this again. "I thought you left," she said quietly. "My flight is tomorrow," he replied. Silence filled the Camelot Cafe. The same place where everything once felt easy now felt fragile. "I didn't come to argue," Ethan said gently. Emma nodded. "I know." He stepped closer, stopping a respectful distance away. "I think I finally understand why you were hurt." She crossed her arms slightly, protecting herself. "Do you?" "I try to solve your fear instead of trusting your strength," he said. "I acted like losing something was unacceptable because I've spent my whole life running from loss." Emma listened carefully. "And I made you feel like you couldn't stand on your own," he added quietly. Her eyes softened slightly. "That's how it felt." He nodded. "I'm still learning how to care without controlling." The honesty surprised her. Rain tapped softly against the windows. Neither spoke for a long moment. "I'm leaving tomorrow," Ethan said finally. The words hit her harder than expected. "Oh, I think staying might only make things harder for you." Emma felt conflicting emotions rise. Relief, sadness, fear. Part of her wanted to agree. Another part didn't want him to go. "I never wanted you to leave," she admitted softly. He looked at her. "I just needed to know you saw me as capable, not someone who needed saving." "I do see you that way," he said immediately. "Then why was it so hard to believe?" He hesitated. "Because trusting someone else's strength means accepting that you can't protect them from everything." Emma stepped closer unconsciously. "That's what relationships are," she said. "Two people choosing each other without guarantees." The words lingered between them. Thunder rolled outside. The cafe glowed in candlelight, just like the night they first grew close. Ethan smiled faintly. "Funny how storms keep bringing us back here." Emma almost laughed. Maybe the universe likes drama. They shared a small smile, the first genuine one in days. But uncertainty still remained. He was leaving, and neither knew whether goodbye would be temporary or final. Ethan turned toward the door. "I just wanted you to know, meeting you changed me," he said. Emma's chest tightened. "You changed me too." He paused, hand on the door handle. For a moment, it felt like the story might end there. Two people who cared deeply, but arrived in each other's lives at the wrong time. Then suddenly, the lights flickered back on. Bright illumination filled the cafe. They both blinked, momentarily stunned. And in that unexpected brightness, something shifted. Neither moved toward the exit. Neither wanted the moment to end. Because both of them realized the same thing at the same time. They weren't ready to say goodbye. Part 12. Choosing without guarantees. The cafe felt different once the lights returned. Not brighter, just clearer. Emma and Ethan stood facing each other in the middle of Morning Light Cafe, surrounded by familiar tables that had witnessed laughter, arguments, and moments neither of them fully understood until now. Outside, rain softened into a steady whisper against the windows. Inside, silence waited for honesty. Ethan slowly removed his coat and placed it on a chair. "I guess I'm not leaving just yet," he said quietly. Emma let out a small breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. "Good," she replied before she could stop herself. They both noticed the word. Neither pretended otherwise. Emma sat at a nearby table, motioning for him to join her. For the first time since their argument, they sat face to face without distractions. No customers, no responsabilities, just truth. "I've been thinking a lot," she began. "So have I." She traced her finger along the edge of her mug. "I wasn't angry because you helped," she admitted. "I was afraid that loving you meant slowly losing myself." Ethan listened carefully, not interrupting. "My whole life," she continued, "I fought to stand on my own. After my parents died, independence wasn't a choice, it was survival." Her voice softened. "When you fix things without asking, it felt like my strength didn't matter." Ethan nodded slowly. "I understand now," he said. "I thought love meant removing pain from someone's life. But maybe love is trusting them to face it." Emma looked at him, surprised by how deeply he had reflected. "That's exactly it." He leaned forward slightly. "I've spent my life controlling outcomes," he said. "If something could fail, I prevented it. If something could be lost, I secured it." He hesitated. "But people aren't problems to solve." Emma smiled faintly. "No, we're much more complicated." He laughed softly. "Yes, terrifyingly complicated." A quiet warmth returned between them. Not the easy excitement from before, something deeper. Hard-earned understanding. Ethan took a breath. "I canceled my return meetings," he said. Emma blinked. "You did?" "I told the board I'm stepping back temporarily." Her eyes widened. "That's huge." "It is," he admitted. "And honestly, terrifying." "Why would you do that?" He met her gaze fully. "Because for the first time, I want to build a life instead of just a company." Emotion filled her eyes. "That's a big risk." He nodded. "So, is loving someone?" The words settled gently between them. Emma looked down, gathering courage. "I was scared you'd always choose work first," she admitted. "I used to," he said honestly. "But meeting you made me realize success without connection feels empty." He paused before adding, "I'm not choosing you instead of my life. I'm choosing a life that includes you, if you want that too." Her heart pounded. No promises. No pressure. Just an invitation. Emma stood and walked slowly toward the window. Rain streaked down the glass, reflecting soft lights from the street outside. She thought about everything that had led her here. Loss, rebuilding, fear of depending on anyone again. Loving Ethan meant uncertainty. But avoiding love meant loneliness she already understood too well. She turned back toward him. "I don't need perfect certainty," she said softly. "I just need honesty and effort." "You have both," he replied immediately. She smiled slightly. "And patience. I move slower than you." He chuckled. "I noticed." Emma stepped closer. "So here's my truth," she said quietly. "I am scared, but I don't want a life where I wonder what could have happened if I'd been brave." Ethan stood too, heart racing. "I'm scared too," he admitted. "But I'd rather learn with you than succeed alone." The distance between them disappeared naturally. No dramatic movement. Just two people finally choosing vulnerability at the same time. Emma reached for his hand. This time, it wasn't tentative. It was intentional. "I don't need you to save things," she said gently. "I won't," he promised. "But I do want you beside me." His smile softened. "That part one can do." They stood quietly, hands intertwined, listening to rain fade into calm night air. For the first time, their relationship didn't feel like two worlds colliding. It felt like two worlds learning how to meet halfway. Outside, clouds began clearing. Moonlight broke through slowly, illuminating the street. Emma laughed softly. Storm's over. Ethan glanced around the cafe. Seems to be a pattern. She smiled. Maybe storms just help people say what they're afraid to say in the sunshine. He squeezed her hand gently. Then I'm grateful for every storm. They spent the rest of the evening talking, not about problems, but about possibilities. How Ethan could split time between New York and Vermont. How Emma might finally travel someday. How neither needed to give up who they were to build something together. Not a perfect plan, just a shared direction. And somehow, that felt stronger. As they prepared to leave, Emma paused at the door. "Hey," she said softly. "Yes. You're still terrible at carrying coffee trays." He laughed. "I'll improve." "We'll see," she teased. She stepped closer and, without hesitation, kissed him gently. It wasn't rushed, not dramatic, just certain. When they pulled apart, both smiled, the kind of smile that comes from relief rather than excitement. Because they hadn't solved everything, but they had chosen each other honestly. And that was enough. For now. End of part 12.